Members, we're about to go on the calendar. Before we do, I want to welcome everyone to the House of Representatives. I want to thank all of you in the gallery for joining us today. When you entered the gallery, you were offered a card that tells you a little bit about the House and reminds you of our House rules. As the Speaker of the House, part of my job is to enforce our rules. If you have any questions about our rules or what is permitted in the gallery, please ask one of the House sergeants or DPS troopers. We're glad that you are here, and we appreciate your cooperation in respecting our rules as we debate today. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 2. Clerk, read the bill.
HB2-003-Laubenberg, relating to the regulation of abortion procedures, providers, and facilities providing penalties.
Chair recognizes Representative Laubenberg.
Members, House Bill 2 addresses abortion law and regulations in our state. House Bill 2 also addresses the health and safety for a woman who undergoes an abortion procedure. There are four main parts to this bill, beginning with the 30-mile rule and admitting privileges. The physician must have active admitting privileges. The facility must be located within 30 miles of a hospital. The hospital must provide obstetrical and gynecological health care services, i.e. Women's health care services. Provide a telephone number for clinic personnel for the pregnant woman. Provide the name and telephone number of the nearest hospital to the home of the pregnant woman. The Preborn Pain Act will prohibit abortions after 5 months of pregnancy. This is determined by the post-fertilization age, with the exceptions of the physical life to the mother and the severe fetal abnormality. The third part is with the RU-486 abortion pill. It must be administered by a physician, and it must follow the FDA protocol on the administering of this pill. It must provide the pregnant woman a copy of the final printed label of the abortion-inducing drug and a telephone number of the physician or health care personnel within the facility in case of questions or an emergency. A 14-day scheduled follow-up visit for the woman must be scheduled after the completion of the drug. It also allows the physician to have the option to follow the dosage amounts as defined by the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And the fourth part is to require that all abortion facilities must be equivalent to the minimum standards of ambulatory surgical centers. And they have until September 1st, 2014 to comply. And again, this bill is the same bill that we heard in the first called session, that was SB 5. And again, as in the last called session, it is my intention to keep HB2 consistent in its current form without adding any amendments. And I want to point out that what we are talking about today truly does deal with the health and the safety of a woman who would undergo an abortion. But we're also, I want to point out, that we are also talking about an unborn child who has pain, who has the nerve endings, the receptors that can feel the pain of an abortion at 20 weeks. That is why the part of this bill that would stop abortions at 5 months is called the Preborn Pain Act. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would love to move passage, but I believe there are a few questions, and so I will yield.
Ms. Farrar, for what purpose?
Will the gentlelady yield? Well, first I have a parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Just to clarify, we are not in the final days of the special session, so it is appropriate to extend the time, correct? Okay, thank you.
Ms. Farrar, we're not in the last 5 calendar days of the special session.
We're not in the last 5
Time
calendar
limits
days.
can be
Yes,
extended.
30 days, correct?
That's
So
correct.
time extensions are in order?
That is correct.
Thank you. Will the gentlelady yield?
Yes.
Lady yields.
Representative Laubenberg, this bill would require that medical abortions be performed in ambulatory surgical centers, correct?
Yes.
Would this require a woman to make multiple trips to an ambulatory surgical center in those cases?
The bill requires that the woman the administering of the RU-486 pill would follow the FDA protocol, which does require the woman to return for the second dosage and to return for a follow-up visit. Yes.
All right, thank you. Is there any risk, do you believe, involved in requiring a woman to physically return to an ambulatory surgical center to take the subsequent pill and the follow-up visit?
No, it would actually be safer.
Would you agree that it increases her risk of not being able to return in the sense of if a ambulatory surgical center is far from her, and which in turn, if she doesn't return, increases the risk for hemorrhage, blood transfusion, and emergent DNC?
This is why we are bringing all the abortion clinics up to the same standard as the ambulatory surgical centers.
They'll all have to convert to, or they would actually, I'm understanding they're not able to convert, but they would have to then change into or become ambulatory surgical centers?
There's nothing to prevent them from upgrading their standards.
Let me ask you this. Would this bill increase the cost of medical abortions?
The cost of an abortion right now is between $300,000 depending on how far along you are, and
I'm speaking specifically to medical abortions. Would it increase the
and
cost?
I would think that they would be getting better care so they wouldn't have the complications, so the cost would probably be actually less.
Do you know this for a fact? Or
You know for a
speculation?
fact that it will increase the cost.
I'm asking you, you
I
contemplated
mean,
the
we can
bill.
talk about hypotheticals.
I'm
I've
asking
given
if you
you my
contemplated the potential burden on the woman if the cost is increased.
The question should be, what is best,
I'm
what
asking
is
the
best
question.
for the health of the woman?
I'm sorry, the back mic
that
is
was
for
my
asking
answer.
questions. Could you answer my question?
Yes, ma'am. I said the benefit is for the health of the woman.
Okay, that doesn't answer my question, but nonetheless, would this requirement mean for what would this requirement mean for women that don't live near an ambulatory surgical center?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. What would this mean for women that don't live near an ambulatory surgical center?
There are many women that don't live near an ambulatory surgical center. There are many women that don't live near an abortion clinic right now. We have a very large state, and so they would do the same thing that they have to do now, but if there are complications, they would be much closer to a place or in the facility where they could get better care.
How do you think that these requirements, such as maintaining a separate surgical suite that includes 240 square feet of operating room, a post-operative recovery room, a pre-operative patient holding area, a sterilizing facilities, separate janitor's closets and equipment storage areas, how do you think that these things make a medical abortion more safe?
Again, anything that's going to improve the facility, that's going to help give better health care to this woman in case any kind of complications should arise is always a good thing.
Are you aware of any other medications that would require a woman to take them in an ambulatory surgical center?
There are no other procedures where the only result or expected outcome is the taking of a life.
Pardon me?
In response to your question on what other procedures would require the extra higher standards, my answer to you is that the abortion is the only medical procedure where the result or the expected outcome is the taking of a life. This is a very unique procedure.
All right, but I'm concerned about the safety of the mother and the fact that there would be reduced locations that she would have to go to and she'd have to travel long distances. Are you not concerned about the situation where a woman would actually be endangered because she would have to travel these long distances and couldn't, and then would have to go? I mean, I'm not asking about your opinion on her decision. I'm asking about her health and safety. Have you thought about these burdens that you put on her, and particularly in this situation where it's not an invasive procedure, how it would impact her life and safety?
Okay. First of all, the woman going to this procedure, if there are complications at any level, should have the highest standard of care. Part of the requirement, the FDA protocol, is that the woman is given the telephone number of the local hospital in case, she can't get a hold of someone at the facility, that she has a, location nearby. So all of this is part of the protocol of the RU-486 regimen.
I want to speak to the narrowness of the exceptions that you have in the bill. There is an exception to protect the life of the woman, but it does not protect serious risk to a woman's health. It reads that a woman must face immediate injury or death to meet this exception. Do you believe it's fair to force a doctor to compromise patient health by waiting until a woman's condition deteriorates to the point that it becomes life-threatening or severely debilitating?
Okay, I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
Yes. You have an exception for the life of the woman, but it doesn't protect a serious risk to a woman's health. It reads that a woman must face immediate injury or death in order to meet this exception. So my question is, do you think it's fair to force a doctor to compromise a patient's health by waiting until a woman's condition deteriorates to the point that it becomes life-threatening or severely debilitating?
Okay, if you look on page 5 of the bill, on line 5, it says, if there exists a condition that, in the physician's reasonable medical judgment, so this gives the physician the full authority to know what condition his patient is in and to have that authority to make that determination.
Right, but that point that the determination is made is when it is an immediate injury or death to her. Why is the threshold so high?
The threshold gives the physician full control over this.
Only to the point where it's immediate injury or death, though.
It says in his reasonable medical judgment.
It goes on to say immediate injury or death. That's the standard.
Okay, so you're talking about the physical life as opposed to
her life.
Let
me back up a little bit. Maybe this will help. Can you name some examples of health issues that might arise that would be covered under your exception?
Toxemia.
What about ruptured membranes?
That, absolutely.
But that's not an immediate injury or death. That progresses on to, it becomes that way once an infection has reached and an infection has become so severe, but that's not immediate.
This is why you place the physician at the center of this. That will be his judgment.
But the language in the bill ties the hands of that physician to immediate injury or death.
I would disagree with you.
Infection to become would not fit that definition. Do you agree with that?
I would disagree with you, Representative. This bill does give the physician the full autonomy and full authority to take care of his patient. And I think that's what you're wanting to know.
Would you be amenable to opening up the exception so that, in say a situation like this where there is a potential, a certain infection just hadn't occurred at the time, but you know it will occur, would you be willing to open your bill to widen the exception?
Representative Farrar, this bill, you could, instead of listing specific conditions, whereas if you left one out, might be excluded if there was an emergency. By this language, we're allowing whatever the physician determines to be the condition that would impair the physical life of the woman. So this language actually gives broad coverage by allowing the physician to have that authority. I would not want to limit the physician's authority.
Aren't you concerned, though, that a physician reading that language that says immediate injury or death wouldn't interpret it the way that you have here? So that's why I'm asking you, would you be willing to open that definition?
And I've already answered that question.
Thank you. Oh, one other question. So a woman that's diagnosed with serious disease during pregnancy.
I'm sorry, you were backing from the
I know,
mic.
I'm having a difficult time too. Mr. Speaker, may we have order, please?
Yeah. It's a little loud in here.
Members, can we have order, please?
What would happen in the situation where a woman was diagnosed with a serious disease during pregnancy and after the 20 weeks, serious disease like stage 4 cancer, where it's not immediate injury or death?
Again, if that is life-threatening and
but it's not at the time, but you know it will be, how will that woman be affected?
Again, that would be the patient, her physician. The bill allows the physician to have that authority in his reasonable medical judgment to make that determination.
See, the way I read the bill and the way I'm afraid physicians might read the bill is they would say, well, I've got to wait until it's life-threatening. Because it's not at this time, but I know if she doesn't have the treatment she needs right now, it will become so sooner. But at the moment it's not, but I know that in a month or 2 months or whatever it is, whatever in the doctor's discretion is, that it will become. And so would you not agree with me that you're tying the hands of the doctor here in these situations?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's why you have the relationship with the doctor, so that he will be able to monitor and oversee her condition as the pregnancy develops. And again, it does go back to giving the physician the full authority in his reasonable medical judgment. So he's not held to a specific, it has to be this issue or that issue. It's whatever the doctor believes is in the best interest for the health of the pregnant mom.
Would you be willing to accept an amendment that says exactly what you just said? Best interest of the woman's health.
As I said at the beginning, I believe this bill is very well stated in the position that you and I are talking about, and no, I would not accept an amendment.
You may believe that, but the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists doesn't believe it. In fact, they oppose this legislation, correct?
You have made that comment, but there are many obstetricians and gynecologists who support this, as we heard in testimony.
The professional association of this segment of the profession opposes it. And I have to believe that it would be because it is tying their hands, because what you're saying in your bill is immediate injury or death. And so if the doctor has to reach that point, the woman has to suffer up to that point.
A physician who is taking care of his patient is not going to let her suffer.
But your bill is tying that physician's hands.
Actually,
by
it's
having
not.
to reach this point.
It's very broad to give that physician the authority.